County Sheriff. And, many years ago, I never would have considered doing something like this. But over the years, I did a lot of studying and been involved with a lot of law enforcement and with the federal government in some ways. But I spent 3 years with the Jesse Helms administration working with him. And what we did there was we were standing against the UN and working with soldiers who were having issues with the UN, who didn't want to wear the UN uniform. If you're familiar with that. I'm sure you've heard of cases in years past, so we tried to help them, defend them. And I spent 8 years in the U.S. Marines, and during that time I was in Desert Storm, combat veteran there. Most of the work we did was based with naval intelligence. We were tasked with battlefield information, confirming information, and troop movement, and all kinds of logistics and things like that. But the interesting thing about that, when they gave me that job, was that they don't give you a choice in the Marine where you go. You just go where they tell you. But one of the interesting things, I didn't realize that we were going to have to take our own ground everywhere we went, and that's what we had to do. So before we could do our job in Cool Lake City, we had to clear 3 buildings, and one of them was 30 stories high. So that was quite interesting. But as I said, after that, I worked with Republican. I was a Republican delegate also for 3 years, and owned and operated my own business for the last 16 years. And I'm working up in Deep Lake, Washington, right now. If you know about that. So that's the reason I'm dressed like this today. Because last time I came to a meeting, I wore a suit, and it was about 90-some degrees inside that room, and I just about melted. So. I admire guys who can stand up in those areas in suits like that and do that. But I can't handle that. So, but I have to be flexible today because of my job. So I hope you forgive me for that. But I've also been trained as an EMT, which is really interesting because the sheriff's department here, unlike the sheriff's department where I was from, operates the ambulance service here in this county. So I feel a little bit of connection with that. And I understand what they have to do because I've been in EMT. I was also trained as a battlefield medic, as a cross training when I was in the U.S. Marines. So I've had actual experience with that. I've also been to every close quarters combat school of the Marine Corps officer. So I've had all of that training, which is much like the police training. In fact, back on the East Coast, many police officers, especially the state police, all go to Camp Lejeune, if you're familiar with Camp Lejeune, Marine Corps base there, for training. That's where they go to get their training. They take the same close quarters combat training that they give the U.S. Marines. And of course, with the things that are going on in Iraq right now, they're actually getting more police type training all the time. It's becoming much more beneficial to them. I've also, I did a year, I like to tell people this, kids like to hear it most of the time, but I did a year in the Arctic Circle. I spent a year on the Russian border in the Arctic Circle working with intelligence and patrolling the borders that were 60 below zero. That was quite interesting. But I've also operated in 4 different Islamic countries, and that I feel is very beneficial today because that's becoming a large issue across America today. And that's something you need to watch because more and more police departments and sheriffs and county commissioners and those people are having to deal with these kind of situations more and more all the time. And they are starting to move into this county now too, by the way. So in small numbers. Nothing to worry about right now. I'm also a husband and father of 3 children also. And I say that because we are in America right now. America, to me, is searching for its soul right now. We've lost our way. We forgot that we were a republic. And that's because of years of poor education in our school systems. And as kind of a side note, that's one of the things I had talked to several different people about, and that's something that needs to happen. Number one, we need to get a hold of our schools and start teaching children the Constitution. And actually, as a sheriff, I would like to go into the schools, which has actually been done, and actually is being done in the state of Kentucky right now. The sheriffs actually go into the schools, and they teach a course in the schools. I think that's really good. one of the things that we see happen in America now is, and it's been a complaint in this county too, that a lot of people complain about, especially if you own land or have horses or cattle, is this environmental development policies, and they come under different names. Even some watersheds fall under these things, and it's all pushed by the United Nations ultimately. That's where it goes back to. And I had worked alongside the United Nations. I worked with Jesse Helms to fight the United Nations. We were trying to kick them out of the country. That didn't work. So they were a little bit bigger than we were. So, but we did try. And but these environmental situations, through sustainable development, I'm sure you've heard that term, sustainable development. Whenever you hear that, close the door or turn off the TV or something, because what they're telling you is a lie. What they want to do is get control of all your land. That's what they're after. And they use the water to do that. One of their new policies now that I know Obama has actually signed on one of his executive orders is, if you have a pool of water on your land that holds water for more than 7 days, this is just a ridiculous example, but it is ridiculous, then it belongs to the government. It belongs to the environmental agency. I've got that in writing, by the way. But, you know, and that sounds silly. Well, it is silly. But that's the kind of things that are going on. And then across the country, there have been all kinds of situations of a heavy-handed government taking place. And such as in South Carolina, a group of paramilitary unit from Homeland Security broke in to a family's house in the middle of the night. The mother, when she heard her baby, jumped up and ran into the living room. They threw her on the floor. It was an accident, but still, it never should have happened. They stepped on this little girl's head and crushed it. And, of course, now she survived. But the point is, they never should have been there in the first place. They were way out of line. They had no business being there. The family hadn't even... It turned out to be a mistake. They got the wrong house. But that's very poor operations. But these kind of things are going on all over America right now. And even some people are being taken into court without due process in some areas. And thankfully, I think we got a prosecutor that doesn't go that route. But in some places, that's just not true. That's just not true. You hear stories like that and you think, well, what's that got to do with the sheriff? It has a lot to do with the sheriff. Because the sheriff doing his rightful duty, living up to his oath of office, can stop a whole lot of that. And right in its tracks, immediately. He has that authority according to the Supreme Court. And if you want to go back to the Library of Congress, there's some writings there from 1927 in the Library of Congress. I read quite a bit of it. It's quite interesting. It lists all the duties of a sheriff and what a sheriff is supposed to do and what a sheriff can do. He is the ultimate law enforcement officer in the county. And he can stop federal intrusion in the county of all kinds. And he has that right. And many sheriffs around the country now are doing that. There was recently, just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, they had a big meeting down in Oregon, and I don't remember the sheriff's name. I should have wrote it down. I wanted to go to it, but I just didn't have time. And a lot of sheriffs from all over the northwest area got together there, and that's what they're dealing with. They're helping to train. There's some people there, the specialists that are coming in to train sheriffs to deal with the federal government now, because it's becoming, as we get farther and farther from where we were as a republic, the sheriffs are finding out they're having to deal with things they haven't a clue how to deal with. In fact, I said this in the last meeting, over 600 sheriffs and chief of police have resigned in the last 4 or 5 months across America because they simply don't want to deal with it.